Welcome to Kingdom Mothers Rise Up, where I encourage and equip you to heal your heart and renew your mind so you can live the fully abundant life Jesus promised you. Let's go. It's time to move.
This is part of a 6-week series on connecting with your child's emotions. Links to previous episodes will be listed in the show notes. So when we're talking about building vocabulary, is our words around emotions, and I kind of want to expand that beyond just, you can get the emotion wheels and the charts, and we can name, like when our kids are little, we've got happy, sad, mad, scared, disgusted. I think those are like kind of the basic ones. And in some ways that's really enough. But you also can get charts that are much more elaborate to break down, like, okay, I'm angry, but like that's irritated, annoyed, frustrated, like all these more specific things, which is sometimes helpful. But what I've found with my daughter is more helpful is actually asking her to tell me what it looks like. If she could draw the feeling, what it would look like. There was one time that I was mad at her, and I don't remember why, probably because she wasn't going to bed. Because she can make that process take so long. And I'm like, no, I'm done. It's time for you to go to bed. Just go to bed. But somehow I don't remember exactly how it went now, but I'd asked her, how she was feeling. And I asked her what it would look like if she could draw a picture of how she was feeling. So she said what it felt like was that she was laying in her bed and I was this huge rock on her feet that was keeping her from going to God. So that picture of how she was experiencing me and how my frustration, she felt like, was keeping her stuck and was blocking her from connecting to God, which makes total sense because we see God like we see our parents as children. So it'd be like, okay, if you're mad at me, then God's going to be mad at me and not want me there either. So having that visual of how she was feeling was so much more powerful than any emotion word she could have come up with to tell me that she was feeling disconnected or lonely or anything like that. Visual was so much more powerful, kind of the idea of pictures worth 1,000 words. So I want to expand that idea of vocabulary to like just all the things that you need to have conversation around emotions. Another time she wanted to do, she calls them doodling programs. She likes to lead. So she told me she wanted to do loneliness. And I'm like, okay, so, my idea of loneliness, the first thing that came to mind is I like deep, meaningful conversations. And so often the loneliest places for me is where it's a large social setting there. It's not appropriate to have those deep conversations because people cry when they talk to me. They tell me things that they don't tell anybody else. And so that's not appropriate at this big, large gathering or whatever. And so for a long time, that was where I would feel the loneliest. And so that was what my picture was me alone in the midst of all these people. And hers was her feeling sad and a wall and me on the other side of the wall being happy. So that picture of loneliness of there's this wall between us and I'm fine and she's over there hurting. Again, just so much more powerful than I'm feeling lonely. And you might have a kid that doesn't visualize things. So there might be some other vocabulary that you need to be able to, have these conversations about how are you feeling? What's going on in your body? That's a huge awareness to help build, because that's why we call them feelings. We feel them. We get angry. We feel our ears get hot. We feel our face flush. We feel our heart pound when we're scared. And some of those are pretty common. You're feeling those butterflies in your stomach because you're nervous or whatever. But there's also individual nuances or whatever I'm still growing in that in my emotions, but I used that awareness when I was learning, and I guess we'll talk more about this next week and who's talking, but learning to hear from the Lord because I cry at everything. But learning that there was a difference in the tears that were like coming out of my old pain or not having the skills to do anything different, and the tears that was sensing the Lord's presence. And so learning like what's going on in my body so I get a better idea of what's going on. So helping kids build awareness like, oh, I see that you're clenching your fists. Are you frustrated? Or I see that you're like sulking and turning into a puddle, are you feeling stuck? Or that kind of stuff to bring that awareness and just to bring the conversation and have it be part of life. So part of building the awareness with my kids, like if we would watch a movie, we would read a story, we would interact with other people, like we would talk about how do you think they were feeling when this happened? Or they were angry and did they make a good choice in that anger? And so it's having lots and lots of conversation. It reminds me of Deuteronomy. I think it's 6, 9 and 6. Maybe it's 9. I don't remember for sure now. I didn't look it up. But where the Lord says, like, take these truths and teach them to your children as you walk along the road, when you rise up and when you sit down. And like, that's how God designed us to train our kids, is just in doing life with them. And so instead of keeping all of it in your head, like talking to them about the awareness, whether it's in those movies and books and stuff, or whether it's within yourself of being like, okay, I can tell that I'm extra irritated today. And like, it's not about you guys. I need to figure that out. Or, when they're doing stuff that needs to be corrected and you can tell, like, I'm not in a good place to correct this. Like, this needs to be addressed, but I need to go take a break first because I want to be sure that I'm showing up in a way that's going to honor you and honor the Lord. Or, and even talking about like when you're excited and all these different things, to like just be constantly having those conversations, to be bringing that awareness. And then that brings the vocabulary, and I feel like I need a better word, because like the expanded just structure for talking about things, that we're not looking to just find a label so we can stick an emotion label on this and then no, we've dealt with it. It's the conversations around the vocabulary to be able to go, okay, that's what you're feeling. So why are you feeling that way? Where did that come from? We need a vocabulary to start with, but the reason that we're doing the vocabulary is so we can have communication and have good conversations. And like I've done that in if I'm ever teaching a new subject or whatever, like when my older kids were homeschooling, I taught some different group classes and stuff. And like, if you learn the vocabulary of a subject, that's your foundation to learn so much more. Like you're doing biology, like understanding all of these, or physical science, like motion and mass and matter. And like, if you don't know what those words mean, you're not really going to gain a lot from the teaching. So this starting with the vocabulary, what do we mean by feelings and emotions and thoughts and all that kind of stuff. Some resources that I used with my older kids, and I haven't looked recently to see, I'm sure they're still out there somewhere. These are by Creative Therapy and Associates. And so it has this chart of how are you feeling today? And so it's this guy making all these different faces, and there's an emotion word underneath. And you can use this to, like, at dinner time or after nap or whatever, everybody needs to pick one and say why they felt that way today. Or just at a time that you're sitting around. We also have a flip book I guess I didn't bring it, and it probably has a dozen or 16 different emotions in it. And so, like, flip through that and be like, what are things that make you feel excited? What are things that make you feel ashamed? What do you do when you're feeling mischievous? Like, okay, you feel that way. What are your options so that you don't get in trouble that you can do when you're feeling mischievous? And I had a thing, you probably can't read it, it's kind of worn off, that I had written on the back because it's laminated, to kind of walk them through, if they had made a poor choice, to identify what they were feeling. I feel blank because blank, and here's what I did. So I was feeling angry because my brother was using too many of the Legos and I wrecked his thing. Like, okay, so you've walked through that awareness, that confession, and then had, instead, I could have, and they have them think of 3 options at least of different things that they could have done. Those 3 options don't actually need to be good options in the beginning, like just options, like, because it opens up that freedom to not judge what's there, but to see it. And as we express it, then we're often like, yeah, that would have been a really bad idea. But it doesn't mean the idea wasn't there. And so being able to communicate that, like, okay, I wrecked this tower, but I could have thrown it all away, or I could have gone and gotten a hammer. Like, I was so mad, I could have actually broken the Legos instead of just breaking the tower. And it's like, yeah, you could have done that, and just let the ideas come. And then obviously be able to talk through, like, what do you think would have happened if you had made that choice? What would have happened if you had made the choice to be like, yeah, I'll just, whatever, you're doing your thing, I'll let you play with them and I'm going to play with them later. Or if I had asked, how soon he was going to be done, or, whatever, but to just help them see that they can solve their own problems, that they do have ideas and resources besides just do what you're told or let the other person have their way. And another one, this is from the same company, this is managing your anger and what's behind it, because anger is kind of a mask emotion. Anger is the easy one to identify. I'm mad, but we're almost always mad for a reason. And so behind the anger, you can't see very good on the screen, but there's shame, sadness, fear, frustration, guilt, disappointment, worry, embarrassment, jealousy, hurt, anxiety. So depending on why you're angry, there's going to be a very different course of action that needs to be taken. So you need to be aware not only that you're angry, but why are you angry? Because if you're angry because you're feeling guilty, well, then you need to confess and ask for forgiveness, and that's going to take care of that. But if you're angry because you're hurt, that's going to need a different approach. Like, you're going to need to decide, is this a person that you can talk to about how they hurt you? Or are you going to have to see that, no, actually, this person hurts me over and over again, and I've tried talking to them, so now I need to figure out how to not put myself in the position to be hurt, or to know what I'm going to do the next time that they do, so there's a very different response that's needed depending on why you're angry. And so that was really good for just helping walk through of, like, okay, we can see you're angry, that's showing up, but let's step back and go, why, and just having especially when you're like building the vocabulary and stuff, to be able to look, they don't have to read it. They can go, well, I think that face, like, I think I'm feeling like that guy, like, I'm feeling really embarrassed. Like, okay, so that makes sense. And to kind of protect yourself, or to not deal with the embarrassment, really, you're acting out in anger. And part of why I think anger shows up so much is because emotions create energy. They're meant to, like, they're in motion. There's supposed to be emotion. They're supposed to move us. It says Jesus was moved with compassion. So if the emotions are creating energy, but you don't have any good options of what to do with it, that's where the outbursts come from, and where the frustrating, the acting out behaviors come from, because there's this energy there that's supposed to be there, but they need to know what are acceptable things to do with it. So we had a box. I don't remember if we called it a break box or a calming box or whatever. But there was paper and crayons in there. There was like fidget type things and like stress ball type things and a puppet that they could talk to. And I think there might have been like a little mini book or whatever of things that you could do to cheer yourself up or to let go of your anger. You know, you could sing or you could run or you could talk to a friend or you could pray. Or so like there was all these little, like a little tool, an emotional toolkit kind of that they could choose to use, or that I could say, hey, you need to pick something from here and have some time by yourself, depending on what was going on. And I had one in particular who would tell things to the puppet that he wouldn't tell to me. So like I'm being the puppet, but he is talking to the puppet, and he would answer the puppet's questions, and he would be honest with the puppet, and he wouldn't be honest with me. And looking back, I can see like he and I butted heads so much because I was still trying to control him instead of direct him. And so I'm sure that's why it was safe to talk to the puppet and not safe to talk to me. But so just different things like that that help them figure out what they're feeling and what's going on.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Kingdom Mothers Rise Up podcast. I'm blessed to have you here. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can join us in the Kingdom Mothers Rise Up Facebook community. When you're ready for more support, I have the Heart Doodling with Jesus monthly membership, periodic group coaching, and one-on-one personalized coaching as well. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.